This is the machine shoulder press, a great exercise to target the front deltoids of the shoulder. Although this may look like a straightforward exercise, there's actually a lot more that goes into this one than you might think. Now I'm doing this exercise on this machine shoulder press from Matrix. Yours may look a little bit different, but it all starts with the height of that seat. We want to take those front delts to their full active range of motion. So at the bottom of this exercise, or as you're about to get that first rep out, those knuckles should be around chin level. So that on the way down on that eccentric, you're going past a 90-degree bend on the elbow. And as you're about to get your first rep up, make sure that you're stacking the elbow underneath that wrist. A lot of times that means is kind of pushing that elbow so that it is directly underneath that wrist. We want to make sure we're pushing straight up and down, and by stacking the elbow underneath that wrist is going to allow us to do us the best. If, for example, you have that elbow behind the wrist, you're going to put a little bit more strain on the shoulder, and you'll also be using a little bit more of the chest because you'll be kind of pushing forwards a little bit first versus straight up. Now, another thing you might have to do, especially if your machine shoulder press has a more vertical and upright backrest like mine does right here, is actually scoot those hips slightly forward so that way you're leaning backwards into this machine. This is going to allow you to have more tension through those front delts because you're able to stack the elbows underneath those wrists better. Versus, let's say I had my back completely flush against that backrest. On that way down, my elbows would actually be going behind the wrist and slightly backwards behind my torso, putting a little more strain on the shoulders and taking tension off of that front delt and more into the chest. Now getting into the execution of this movement, as you are going up, don't just think about pushing straight up towards the ceiling, but also imagine like you're trying to bring those elbows closer towards each other. This will help develop a better mind-muscle connection with your front deltoids. And on that way up, make sure that we are extending those arms out completely. It is all right to lock out that elbow. Make sure you don't pause there for too long in order to make sure we get more constant tension on those front deltoids. As you can see, I'm doing right here. I'm going to the very top, getting a lockout for a brief second and going right back down. Not because it's bad for that elbow joint, but because I want to make sure I don't take off tension of the front delts for too long. Always slow and controlled on that eccentric. Shoot for 3 seconds on that way down and make sure you're not excessively slamming that weight at the very bottom. If you struggle keeping those elbows stacked underneath those wrists on that way down, just imagine like you're trying to push those elbows forward as you go down to that eccentric. You also notice that I'm using those handles on the outside that allow me to have a pronated grip and not the ones on the inside. Using the grips like I'm showing right here will allow you to use less of those triceps, and you'll typically feel a lot better tension through those front delts. However, always do the variation that you feel more comfortable with. For example, let's say you experience lots of shoulder pain. Those neutral grips will typically allow you to feel a little bit less strain to the shoulders, so do this if you need to. Also, when performing this exercise, do your best to avoid arching that back too much and lifting that chest up towards the ceiling, as this will put more tension through the chest and take some off from the front delts. As you're getting closer to failure, make sure that you're squeezing that core. That way you're not leaning to one side or the other, and you have your feet outside hip width apart for a nice strong base. Another thing that might help you push closer to failure is as you're trying to knock out those last couple reps, squeeze those hands a little bit tighter. Remember, a main driver of hypertrophy is pushing close to failure, and this is what it should look like. Leave a like right now if you want a big and juicy front delts, and also subscribe to the channel for more tutorial videos just like this one.